We say things like, maybe later, perhaps another time, or I'll see you tomorrow. But for some of us, there won't be a tomorrow. Listen as your worst nightmares come to life. These nightmares have become someone's reality. My name is Justin Crowley, and this is The Murder Project. Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 44 of The Murder Project. We are back, and we are going to bring you the part 2 episode for Sharee Miller and the murder of Bruce Miller. This is a very interesting case as far as the details are concerned. I'm going to be sharing with you a bit of info I found through a interview that Sharee did, and it should bring some kind of closure to some of the questions that we had on the previous episode. If you're new to the podcast, The Debrief is an episode where I sit down with my good friend and former police officer Mike Smith to discuss the cases further. In The Debrief, we will discuss the case from both sides of the aisle, theories that we might have, and anything we think needs a second look. The Debrief is an unscripted and off-the-cuff commentary about the cases that we are currently covering. The hope of The Debrief is to break the cases down further, but in a relaxed environment with the true crime that we love and also some laughter. So, let's get the episode started. Bow, 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 bow. Bow, 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 bow. Mike Smith in the house.
Yes, sir.
How's it going, buddy?
It's going. I'm ready to get to it. And before we do, I just want to go ahead and say I am being besieged by allergies. And so there might be some sniffles.
And he's got Mr. Sniffles again. It's just a reoccurring thing.
I work outside
It's not my house either.
I work outside.
Just so everybody knows.
No.
It's not.
No, I work outside a lot, and it's been very windy, and cats live in my dwelling, and so
it's unfortunate.
It does feel that way sometimes with the danders. So I just wanted to say up front, I'm sorry if y'all hear any sniffling and that takes you out of the immersion. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to breathe. Yeah.
So we got a very interesting case this week. I think all of them are interesting. I mean, otherwise we wouldn't do them, but we have an addition to this part 2 addition in information because I was able to find a interview that Sharee did with some guys that did a podcast, and I'll give you all that information here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But it kind of shined some light on some of the questions that I had from the last one.
Yeah. I can't wait to get into it because weirdly enough, even after all this time, there are still things that I find out that that I don't even get to know until we're into it. So you're getting reactions live.
Yeah, that's the fun part about it.
It is fun, and this case is bonkers because this is kind of back when incidents like this were first starting to happen, like people being manipulated so openly using like chats and stuff.
Yeah.
So obviously this isn't one of a kind. There are several out there.
No, but this is one of the ones I think they kind of tried to dub as the first internet murder, even though it didn't necessarily take place. I mean, the murder and the instructions and some things like that were kind of set up in that format.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Sharee points out in that interview is that they talked on the phone. Sharee and Jerry talked on the phone all the time.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the things that she said where she's like, well, it's not technically an internet murder because we didn't, but she's like, it was the internet's brand new, and so I think they wanted to go with it.
Yeah. I
hope my accent was all right for that.
It did sound pretty good.
All right.
Yeah, it was a little between like Midwestern / Southern. So yeah, I think it worked.
I mean, I don't think I can ever get away from the Southern. I think that's always going to be kind of embedded in there. But before we get kind of into the meat and potatoes of this thing, I wanted to bring up something that Mike and I are kind of getting into. It's not an ad sponsorship or anything like that, so don't think I'm trying to sell you something here. But last week I got onto a new app. It's called Wisdom, and it's kind of a audio interface type app where mentors, creators, experts, things like that can get on this app and they can interact with people on the app, specifically whether they are influencers or trainers, specialists, whatever themselves, or if it's someone that wants to get on there and actually talk to the person. And one of the cool things I found about the app as I was kind of messing around with it this week is that if someone sets up a talk, let's say you go on there and you follow me, which you can only do that right now because the Android software is supposed to drop in the next week, less than a week.
Right, so I don't have mine yet.
Yeah, so Mike won't be able to get on there just yet, but he will be on there. And so I wanted to kind of give you the kind of breakdown of it while we're getting all this set up. But if you go to the Facebook, the Instagram, or the Twitter page that we have for the Murder Project, you can find the direct link to my page on Wisdom. And if you don't have the app, it will allow you to set it up. You don't have to set up the whole profile and all the junk that goes with it. If you just want to go on there and listen to talks or kind of interact with different people, you can just set up a very basic profile, no picture, no nothing, just a username backed up by your email.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it lets you right in there.
Yeah, you were telling me about it, and y'all, it sounds awesome because say he sets up a session to talk about, the Murder Project and other things. People can, after you set up your profile and stuff, you can get on there, follow him, and while he's broadcasting, you can call in.
Yeah, you just hit join conversation, and then it alerts me and says, hey, Joe Smith is wanting to join your conversation. And then I can just hit add, and then boom, you're in.
Yeah.
And we're just talking to each other.
Yeah, live. So you can legit call in, join the conversation, and chat with Justin or I.
Yeah, hopefully
or both
soon.
sometimes.
Yeah.
We've been talking about that. Well, like we'd both sit down and use like his account and do that. We haven't yet, but we're looking forward to it. And it sounds awesome because that's a cool way to get to know some of y'all out there, I think.
Yeah, we can actually bring you in. You can ask questions about cases that we have done previously. You can ask us and we can talk about cases that we might want to do in the future. And it is a way that I can interact and Mike can interact with the listeners of this show directly without having to get on to another kind of provider that's got something else going that maybe you have to pay to get into or anything. Like, you set this up, it's all free.
Yeah.
And they're working on ways to monetize people that use the app, but it's not going to be done in a way that they're doing things now with all the ads and all the stuff. Basically, they're going to use the information. From what I understand, they're going to use the information based off of viewership, amount of minutes listened, things like that. So it's not going to be anything crazy. But one of the things I thought was really cool is that if we kind of got this kind of worked out and we had people that really wanted to do that, we could set it up to say, okay, on Friday, I'm going to open up a live talk. It's going to be called, say, Friday, 6 p.m. Central Time. It's going to be called Conversations with Listeners, whatever. And I'm going to open that up. I'm going to set the conversation time to 10 minutes. Or 5 minutes or 30 minutes, whatever, because that's one of the cool things about it. You can go in there and you can actually set up the time and say, okay, each guest has 5 minutes, 25 minutes, all the way up to an hour. And then different people can come into the queue and you can add your name in there and you'll go in order as you're added. And then when one conversation is over, the next person is brought in and you can just keep the conversation going. And if you had any questions or if you wanted to talk to us, this is the way that you get to do it. So if you want to go to any of our social media pages, that Wisdom app is on there. If you click on the direct link, it'll take you to my page so that you can add me on there. And then once I start a talk, because I've been getting on there and just doing some talks, just talking about different things, talking to different people on there, jump on there, say hi.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That sounds really cool. And so, yeah, if y'all are listening, check it out. Let's talk. Let's share some thoughts. Let's talk about the Murder Project. Let's talk about murder.
Yeah, it is a platform that is set up that literally brings us and you guys together, and we can conversate in real time. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
Super cool.
That was my spiel for the Wisdom app. Go on there, check it out, follow us, join the conversation. We'd love to have you. We'd love to talk to you, and we'll see you guys on there. So now, let's get into it, Mike.
Let's do it.
The case of Sharee Miller and the murder of Bruce Miller.
The Junkyard Dog.
The Junkyard Dog.
Yeah, this one, things like this always get me interested because I have spent a lot of time on the IMs, especially when I was younger. We've talked about that before. And I got to say, I didn't meet like a lot of strangers or people like by circumstance or by chance, but I did know a lot of people, some better than others, and would chat all the time. Like there were times where I would have multiple messengers open, and I'd be switching between them. Yahoo Messenger, AIM,
yep,
AOL Instant Messenger,
you
Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, I had the AOL and the Yahoo always open at the same time. Back in the early 2000s.
Yeah, and the hard part was, especially when you were getting into it, you had to keep track of those conversations. But you know who didn't have a problem with that? Sharee Miller.
Yeah. She had a lot of interesting conversations going on with a lot of interesting men. And she was able to kind of keep at least somewhat of a angle on everything that was kind of happening in those conversations. And I got to tell you, just to kind of start this off, in the first episode, I mentioned that Sharee was born in Michigan, October 13th, 1971. Now, one of the things that I found out is that while she was on her own at age 16, in the first episode, I mentioned that by 19, she was already married with a kid, but she actually got married at 17.
Oh, wow.
So not long after she left the home, and she talks about a lot in this interview that she brings up her past. She goes in depth to it a little more. One of the things that I was talking about in the last episode is that she kind of had a rough childhood and all that, but she really gets into it. And just to give that podcast a sourcing and a shout out, it was called the Criminal Perspective Podcast, Interview with Convicted Murderer Sharee Miller. And so on that podcast, she kind of reaches out and is talking about that, but she's talking about being sexually assaulted by her stepfather when she was a child, her brother being sexually assaulted by her stepfather.
Oh, terrible.
Being abused, physically abused by the stepfather and other members of his family. Like if you look at the things that she says in there, apparently the abuse extends out past the stepfather into other areas as well as other kids being abused. And so there's kind of this, what she talks about is kind of a hush-hush situation going on where they weren't supposed to talk about it.
Of course, yeah, that's part of how these abusers get away with it for so long. It's a type of psychological conditioning. They're like, hey, this is just in the family. You don't tell nobody, because then it just makes it worse for everyone.
Yeah, there's like a situation where they're talking about she was talking about one of her uncles where her stepfather said, well, he made love with this child, but, he didn't kill her or anything and everything. And as a child, as adults, we're like, oh, but as a child, she doesn't know any better about what she's being told by the people that she trusts.
Right. That are supposed to protect her.
Her protectors. Yeah. And they're doing a horrible job of that, but she doesn't have any other point of reference.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kind of takes that as the point of reference. She moves on. When she's 16 years old, she decides she's going to leave the house. When she's 17, she's already married. When she's 18, she's pregnant. When she's 19, she has the kid.
Right.
And then it kind of gets a little crazy after that, because when she's talking about all this stuff, she's like, so my first husband was in the Air Force and he was out, I don't know if he was deployed somewhere or if he was doing training or something like that, but she had an affair with another guy. And then when he found out about it, they got divorced, but then she got married to another guy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, well, that's kind of why I thought that the second child, which was the daughter, she had a son and a daughter at this point. The second child was with the guy that she married second.
Okay.
However, so she got after her husband found out that she cheated on him and he left her, she got with another guy that was different from the guy that she was cheating on her husband with.
Yeah.
But that's who she got pregnant by. She was pregnant by the guy that she cheated on her husband with, but she married a different dude. Starts getting,
yeah. So she's basically just, in like full survival mode, just hitching to what's going to take care of her best at the time.
Yeah. And I think that's that. She kind of has that survivalist mentality. She's grown up in unsavory conditions.
Yeah.
She is looking out for her own well-being. And if that means that, in what we're going to talk about here in a second, if that means that she has to put her children in harm's way to do it, maybe not intentionally.
Sure.
But she'll do that.
Right. Yeah. Because what she is used to, what she can be comfortable with, is what obviously normal folks, and I say that term loosely, but normal folks would see as a bad situation, she sees as a status quo.
Yeah.
And so even
that's all she knows.
I don't think she does it even intentionally. I'm not saying it's good, but she's just doing what she knows best.
Yeah. And when she is with this second husband, that is when her son is abused by her second husband, and her second husband fractures his skull. Mm-hmm. And she said it was fractured in like 6 different places. Like the back was shattered like an egg is the term she used. And that when he got arrested and he was in the processes of going to jail and everything, that's when they separated. Uh-huh. And one of the things I found out from this interview is that Sharee actually met Bruce through the second husband.
Oh, wow.
Her now second ex-husband knew Bruce and had done some work with him. And so she already knew Bruce. And then what we find out later is that it's after this second divorce, because the man that she had the affair with that fathered one of her children was 20 years older than her. Uh-huh. So in this second divorce from this other guy, and I know it's it gets confusing because there's lots of guys, but she realizes that there is something there with the older men, mm-hmm. that she can manipulate them and she can get away with more, she feels like, with the older men. And so basically she's going to try to put it in play, mm-hmm. because she knows that with the older men, she has a situation where they have the means to take care of her. They are, in her words, kind of excited about being with a younger woman. And in these previous relationships where she has been abused and she doesn't feel like she has not power, but she doesn't have any say in the relationship or how things work or anything like that. Not necessarily doesn't have power, but that's what she's going to go for. She feels like when she goes in this opposite direction, she can control the relationship.
That's right. Yeah. And she has gathered all the tools she needs to manipulate these people into taking care of her. She can garner so much sympathy that she can use to make herself look more victimized and make them feel sorry for her. And you get the whole, I wouldn't treat you like that.
Yeah, I wouldn't do you like that. Yeah, you've been in a terrible situation.
Yeah, what you need is somebody to take care of you. That's something that I can offer.
And that's exactly what Bruce told her.
Right. And so she was like, got him.
Got him.
Yep.
Now I can kind of move around a little more comfortably in these relationships.
He's busy. He's secured. He's running a business. So he's not watching her under a microscope. He's an established older man. So he's got things to do. He's busy. And so that's less oversight for her to have to deal with. So while she's out wilding.
Yeah, she was wilding out.
She's going to the bar. She's, meeting other guys. She's dancing. She's fooling around. And it's easier for her to control that narrative because he's not there to see it happening.
Right. And I kind of felt like whenever I was looking at this scenario kind of from the outside, just visualizing what I thought it was, Bruce seemed to me like the type of guy that would put in a hard day's work, went home, ate dinner, did a few things around the house, maybe watched the news, and then by like 8:30, 9 o'clock, he's asleep because he probably gets up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
And then that gives her the opportunity to kind of dabble in that nightlife mm-hmm. and get away with it. And then if she needs to kind of help out Bruce with some things during the day, she can. But that also opens it up for her to be at the house jamming away at that keyboard.
That's right, which is exactly what she used to meet all sorts of people, but more specifically, Jerry Cassaday.
Yeah, Jerry Cassaday. And one of the things I found out from her interview is that she met Jerry Cassaday before she married Bruce.
So she was already chatting with him.
Yeah, they were already chatting together. And so the way it was kind of set up is that she gets a job at Bruce's salvage yard, and they're kind of talking back and forth. They got the work relationship thing going on. And she stated that they had when they started dating, they dated for about 6 or 7 months and then got married. Uh-huh. And this relationship that she had going with Jerry Cassaday was already in motion, but it was a as we've spoke about, it was a long distance relationship. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of just like maybe a playful thing, maybe a morale booster for herself, you know, of whatever, course. You know, whatever that situation is.
And for him in a lot of ways. And, like we've discussed before as well, it's all one-sided. It's all, affection and nice things and sympathy, that are, things like that are being said that makes you think that everything about this person is good.
Yes.
They never see anything else. All you're getting is what they tell you, and that narrative is whatever Sharee wanted it to be.
Exactly.
And so he was already on the hook.
Oh, yeah. And he is already at this point, from my understanding, kind of in this broken situation where he is a former police detective. He didn't lose his job, but he was kind of getting pushed out the door. So he went ahead and left. Mm-hmm. And then I think he gets into a scenario where he just starts spiraling out of control. Like, he does not know how to deal with the fact that he's not a lawman anymore. And I can understand the way that feels. And then having those kind of adrenaline dumps happen all the time when you're working in law enforcement. You get used to how everything's set up. You get used to a lot of different things. I know a lot of people, whether or not when they got into law enforcement, if they knew they were going to get in law enforcement, what I mean is that I always wanted to be a cop, but you've talked about, like, you didn't really have a plan to get there.
Right.
But regardless, we both ended up there. And then when you leave, there's like this weird feeling about where you're like, wow, I don't really know what to do with myself right now. I don't really know how to handle some of these emotions that I'm having.
Yeah.
These feelings that I'm having, these memories and thoughts that I'm having. And for some people, if you start hitting the booze and the pills, as we're going to see with old Jerry, things can start spiraling out of control pretty quick.
They do. You're looking for anything to mellow you out. Mm-hmm. Uppers, downers, a combination of both. Just trying to feel more alive, because there was a time when you were in a job that did that for you.
Yeah.
Whether you wanted it or not, because when you're in the world of law enforcement, your job can go from 0 to 100 any second.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's how it happens.
Yeah. I sometimes when people are talking to me and they're like, hey, you know, so what's it like being a cop? And I'm like, you know, it's usually like 95% boredom, followed by maybe 5% of sheer terror, or maybe it's 98 and 2.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where you're sitting in your car, you know, snacking on some sunflower seeds or something, and you're not doing much, and then all of a sudden this call comes across the radio, and then boom, everything in your body is completely elevated. You get that adrenaline rush. You switched on your lights and sirens. You're speeding down, you're cruising down the road at, 100 miles an hour, something crazy, whatever. And like you said, that was a good point. Whether you like it or not, or whether that was something you were looking for or not, you get it.
Mm-hmm, you do. And you grow accustomed to it. And then when it's gone, it is a void. You're like, what do I do with all this energy? Why? You're still, these habits that you get in the world of law enforcement, they never go away. So you're always looking for problems to solve. You're always reading license plates. You're watching everybody walking around you.
Yep, trying to get a feel of the room.
Exactly. Yeah, you never sit with your back to the room. You want to see, you want to have good sight lines when you sit in a restaurant, all that stuff. And without it, you start to get a little lost, and Jerry certainly did. And so he found himself trying to get rid of those feelings with booze and eventually narcotics.
Yeah, and it doesn't work out. It doesn't work out well for him in the sense of, I think Jerry tries to jump around and find maybe suitable jobs that he might feel like he can get that back. It says that he ends up moving to Reno, Nevada, and he becomes a pit boss. And maybe that presence he has in the casino world kind of makes him feel like he was when he was back in law enforcement. It's not the same thing. And unfortunately for Jerry, it's not going to work out because he's already in his addiction. He is already too far gone.
Right.
He is not going to be in a spot where he can hold a normal job with normal hours, whether that's night shift, day shift. I'm saying 8-hour shift, 10-hour shift, 5 days a week, with only your scheduled days off. And you can't be calling out sick, 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Because, you're hungover or
you're too low from just dumping way too many booze and drugs in your system.
You got the shakes.
Yeah.
And then maybe, that's when you're like, well, maybe I'll just tie on a few before I go into work.
That's how it starts.
And then that's how it starts. And then before you know it, you're getting called up to the carpet and someone's letting you go.
Yeah. Well, side note, when it comes to like casino personnel, the type of people they're hiring for, ex-security, ex-police, ex-military, those are very popular choices. I know that because there was a time when I was looking for a job, and casinos love people like that have that really fine attention to detail when it comes to people watching. Mm-hmm. They love that stuff. So it's no surprise to me when I read that he had got that job. That's what they want. You're looking at people. You're looking for signs of suspicion, signs of deception, people acting funny, fidgety. They want people that can spot that easily. And a cop would definitely be somebody that could, because that's part of your job.
Yeah. I always wonder why he chose Reno instead of maybe going to like Louisiana or Atlanta or somewhere that seemed like it might have been a little bit closer, like, going hitting the riverboats or, something like that. Maybe there's more money in it. And he's like, hey, you know what? I've got a reputation around the town that I live in, and I just got to get away. And so
nothing wrong with that.
The best place for me to go is the biggest little city in the world.
Yeah, and he did. But it didn't work out. He ended up going back to Missouri.
Yeah, and so when we have kind of the interactions with Sharee and Jerry happening while she's married to Bruce, some of these things are happening while he's now in Reno. Because after Sharee gets married to Bruce and they're still having these phone conversations, her and Jerry, I mean by that, they're having these phone conversations, they're having these instant message chats, they're talking to each other. And it's not until Sharee is married to Bruce that she and Jerry decide to meet each other for the first time.
That's correct.
And so the first time that they meet up with each other was in Reno, Nevada. And that's when Sharee is selling Mary Kay or whatever. And so she's going to go down there and, to these conventions. And that's kind of, I think, her spin to Bruce is that
it's for Mary Kay. I'm going to go there for like a conference or like a gala or whatever they do in Mary Kay. I don't actually know.
I don't know that either.
But that's what she uses to get there. And why would Bruce question that?
Yeah,
That's her side hustle.
Yeah.
Or her main hustle. He's like, go, girl.
Yeah, he's accepting of that. And he's like, yeah, you need to go down there and go just be careful. There's probably a lot of crazies down there or something, He probably had some sort of spin on it, but that's where she gets the opportunity to meet Bruce in person. She already feels like she's got this relationship with him, and she has. She knows him by the phone and by the interwebs. And they meet up down there several times. And also, I found out from the interview that they didn't just meet up the 2 times that I originally thought, that they had met up, several times. Sharee says that this relationship that she had with Jerry was more than just that. They met up a lot of times. Mm-hmm. And so one of the places that I was reading the information on said that they had met up a few times in Reno, but they didn't really kind of go past that. And I think that general narrative got spread around to a lot of different outlets that were covering this specific case. And that's one of the things whenever we're doing these podcasts is that we get the information that's put out there. Some of it is repeat of other things. So, sometimes you can get some little things wrong, but we try to go and correct it. That's also a great thing about doing a part 2.
That's right.
Because we have an opportunity to go back and start looking for more information and figuring out more information even when we talk to each other. But they are going back and forth in this relationship. And then we had a scenario in part 1 where I told you that Sharee had told Jerry that she was pregnant. Well, that was not actually the first time that she had told him she was pregnant.
Wow.
She had told him before this, from their kind of encounters in Reno, that she was pregnant because she heard from a friend that she met down there that knew Jerry that he was kind of sleeping around and he might have some STDs. And so she might need to get herself checked out. So she was trying to figure out, well, how am I going to ask Jerry about this without making it sound like... So she tells Jerry, she's like, hey, I think I'm pregnant. I'm going to go to the doctor and get everything checked out and everything.
Yeah.
But, they're going to ask me some questions. And so I just need to know up front, like, you don't have any STDs. We don't have, I don't have anything to worry about on that end or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like a conversation they have. And then she basically goes to the doctor, quote unquote, tells him she goes to the doctor. But then when she gets back, she says, "Oh, I'm not pregnant."
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like, it's weird because what we're going to talk about in this one is we're going to walk you through literally the setup.
Right.
The setup of how all this began, starting with that first time that she told Jerry that she was pregnant and she lied.
Right. And she used that as a tool to find out about like STDs and stuff because she heard from somebody who heard from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
So what I think is funny is she goes down to this conference. She meets up with him in Reno, which I imagine is like over like a long weekend maybe, or maybe a week trip. But
maybe that extended weekend.
Sure. And I'm sure she left it, she made it pretty steamy.
Yeah. Based on some of the information I got from them, I'm telling you, like,
right.
If you really want to get into the juicy details, some of the stuff that we're not going to cover on this, because we don't go down that road. And maybe later on, I was thinking about in if we ever set up like a Patreon deal where we had kind of like inside chats with people where we did like kind of live video events for the Patreon and stuff like that. That's something we've thought about later on down the road. We're definitely not there yet, but that's something we thought about where we can actually kind of expound on some of these things that we're talking about and give you like a better idea of some of the things that we're talking about, hoping that your children are in the room.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I'd like, keep it NSFW, as they say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not safe for work.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad. Yeah, I didn't know that
Come
acronym.
on, Justin.
Sorry.
Come on.
I'm not with the times, I guess.
Yeah, me neither. I had to learn that from my child. It's whatever.
Yeah, it's whatever.
But so, I mean, she had to do something like that. I'm not saying she didn't have feelings for the guy, but I can't think of a better tool to make somebody stay that interested in you over a long distance.
Yeah, and she realized at this moment, whenever she kind of drops this line on Jerry that she's pregnant, and he voluntarily gives her all this personal information about himself, which I'm sure he's already given her a lot at this time, but she realizes that she can manipulate him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a level of manipulation there, and now she can kind of start raising the bar.
You're right.
She can do with him kind of as she pleases, and this is when she realizes this.
Yeah.
It's not going to matter just yet.
Nope.
But it is going to come into play here in a little bit.
In a hard way.
In a very hard way. So where this kind of situation starts to derail is that I learned from the interview that Sharee is in a situation where Bruce is kind of like this outstanding guy. He was never mean to her. He never did anything to upset her, hurt her feelings, do anything like that. He had a good reputation around town. He had a great business. He was a businessman that had a good reputation is basically what I'm trying to say. And he was not someone that was like, oh yeah, Bruce acts like a good guy, but when he goes home, he beats on his old lady or something. Yeah. He didn't have that reputation at all. He had a reputation, a very positive reputation, and she did not. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that I would like to change from this episode versus the last one is that I would think that people around town would know kind of what she's up to.
Right.
I would think that Bruce would have to have some sort of idea of what she was doing in her spare time based off what they say, the company that she hangs out in and the company that goes to the salvage yard.
Right.
There's got to be a scenario set up to where Bruce has to know something sometime. Maybe he doesn't care.
Sure.
Or maybe he's starting to kind of fish around for answers.
Yeah.
It's like she wakes up the next day. He's like, hey, I'll be home for lunch at noon. He gets home from lunch and he's like, hey, so where you been? Where'd you go last night? I got up to go to the bathroom. I noticed you weren't home. And if they've never had a conversation like that, she's going to be like, oh, crap.
Yep. I'm going to reach in my pocket. I'm going to pull out a lie.
Yeah. He's on to me.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to take things up a step. And in the same time that all this is happening, Sharee is having relationships with other men in the town that she lives in.
Mm-hmm.
She's got her nightlife going. And then Jerry, he's still on the hook, but now it's like not on the hook, he's on the needle. And now he's fiending and he wants some more Sharee.
Right, yeah. He wants to be with her.
Yes.
Because she alludes to that being a goal for her as well.
Yeah. She tells him that ultimately she would like to end up with him too. It's just that she's married. And whenever I was telling you guys about kind of their relationship in the part 1, I did not know at the time, but Sharee and Jerry are having this relationship, and Jerry's trying to pump it up a notch.
Mm-hmm.
And so he starts coming up to Michigan unannounced to see her.
Right.
He's trying to take it to this next level. Like, hey, you're telling me all this stuff on the phone.
Yeah.
You're giving me,
Surprise,
all these indicators.
I'm in town for the weekend.
So do you want to be with me or not?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, surprise, I'm in town for the weekend. And so Sharee is put in this situation where Jerry's showing up to her home turf unannounced, and then she has to change what she's doing kind of on the fly. And then at the same time, I'm kind of thinking to myself, well, if she's seen out in public with Jerry, is that going to change the outlook on her? Because people are seeing her at the bar dancing with other men, flirting. And they said she was very flirtatious.
Yeah.
That it was very obvious about what she was doing, what her intent was when she was out at these places. Yeah. And
she was out there living.
She's living her life,
That's
living
right.
her best life. And
she sure was.
One of the other things that's happening during all this is that she's starting to skim a little money off of Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not realize this at the beginning.
Is that right?
Yeah. She was starting to steal money from Bruce. And she was worried that she was about to get put in a scenario where he was going to find out. So what does she do? She's got 2 terrible situations going on right now.
Mm-hmm.
So she's got to play both sides.
That's right.
So what she does is she tells Jerry that Bruce is going to stay in the dark about all this stuff that's going on, because she's starting to feel like Bruce is getting an idea of what's happening. But Jerry is going to be her main card in all this, because what she does is that she tells Jerry that he cannot come up to Michigan. And he's like, why? We want to be together. We love each other. Why,
right.
Like, why are you trying to put a stop to this? Why are you trying to keep me away from you? She's playing a game. Jerry's in love.
That's right.
And so she needs to figure out a way to keep Jerry out of here.
What she thinks is going to keep him out.
Well, yeah. She thinks, all I got to do is tell him something. We'll get into that. All I got to do is tell him this. Maybe he'll stay away. So what narrative does she spin? This is when you enter into Bruce is a mob boss.
That's right.
He's a mafia don, I believe is the word they use.
Running rackets out of the scrapyard.
Yeah, this is just, his scrapyard is just a racketeering enterprise that he's got with the mob.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very dangerous man. You need to stay away from him because he's got connections and he can make us disappear.
Yeah, and the worst mistake that she makes is she makes it look like she lives a terrible life under Bruce's thumb, where she's being assaulted, sexually assaulted, not just by Bruce, but also his other mafia cohorts.
Yes.
And so Jerry here is going to hear this, and he's like, well, that's my Sharee.
Yeah, that's my girl.
I ain't going to put up with that.
Yeah.
He's like, I know how to handle bad guys, because guess what? Jerry does.
Yeah.
He was a homicide detective in Cass County, Missouri.
Yeah. He is very familiar with the dealings of unsavory individuals.
So she's saying all this, thinking it's going to push him away. It does the exact opposite.
Yeah. He's like, all right, I hear what you're saying. I'm feeling what you're putting down.
Mm-hmm.
How can I help?
That's right.
And at first, I think she tries to push him away.
Yes.
And then when all of this stuff is kind of building up, and that's what I was kind of leading into when I'm telling you that she's kind of skimming money off of Bruce, and all of this is that she's afraid that this stack of cards over here that she has with Bruce is going to tumble.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like that Jerry Cassidy is a very reckless or kind of untethered individual.
Untethered, that's a good word.
So she's not wanting to get out of a relationship with Bruce to get in a relationship with Jerry, because she does not feel like he is going to provide her with the same things that Bruce does.
Right.
Bruce he's got cash.
Mm-hmm.
He's nice. He treats her well.
Right.
Jerry, as time is going on, he's going to be a former police officer turned pit boss, turned unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
And she's thinking to herself, like, I don't want to have to carry the weight here.
No, she's not really designed that way at this point in her life. She puts herself into other people's nests and makes herself at home.
Right.
And I'm not saying she's not capable of making her own home, but she's going with who can take care of her the best.
That's her words. Mm-hmm. She is looking for this, not saying, like you said, not saying she couldn't be in a situation where she could take care of herself. She chooses not to.
Right.
She's choosing to be in this situation using manipulation on men. Now, I think it's important to point out that the way that she was manipulating Bruce and the way that she was manipulating Jerry were two different things, because she had two different wants and needs from these guys.
That's right.
They had different roles in her life. Mm-hmm. Jerry was just kind of the fun fling that was like maybe a weekend meetup. Mm-hmm. Bruce was the provider.
That's right.
She was telling Jerry all the things that she needed to tell him to keep the relationship interesting, as you pointed out, steamy. Right. Mm-hmm. But she never had any intention of doing anything remotely close with Bruce like she had. I'm sorry, with Jerry like she had with Bruce.
Right. And I guess it all comes to a head when she says that she's pregnant for a second time.
Yeah, so she's starting to get the feelers going that Bruce is onto her charades. Mm-hmm. And so she says that she doesn't want Bruce.
Sharee charades.
Mm-hmm. That's a tongue twister right there. Mm-hmm. But she says that she is afraid that Bruce is onto her and that he has such a good reputation around town that she doesn't want him to find out who she really is. Mm-hmm. And I also wonder in some ways if she was also looking at her own reputation. Like if Bruce finds out, he leaves her, and then everybody's like, Bruce, what happened? He's like, Sharee's a whore, mm-hmm. and she's been cheating on me. She's been screwing around with all these guys. She's stealing money from me. So what does her next relationship look like? It ain't going to be a step up.
It's going to be a little slimmer.
It's going to be a step down. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, she does not come out and say that in her interview, but I believe that is where her motivations lie.
Right. She's
going to have to step down.
Mm-hmm. I got to take care of one of these problems.
Yeah, one of these problems is going to have to be taken care of, and maybe I can use one of my other problems to take care of this problem. And I got to feel like she thinks that while she's doing all this, not only is she going to eliminate one problem, but now she is going to have extreme leverage in another.
Absolutely.
In a way that she can not only manipulate, but fully control the outcome of everything in this other relationship. So, like you just said, she steps it up a notch, mm-hmm. and she starts telling Jerry, she's like, okay, I'm in this scenario with Bruce, and he's going to figure out that I've been cheating on him and stealing money from him. So how do I try to save Bruce's reputation, but also mine at the same time? Let's see, what could we do?
Well, I need to help you get out of this. I mean, we gotta get rid of Bruce.
Somebody's got to kill him. Mm-hmm. Somebody's got to kill Bruce. I mean, I can't believe in this scenario, the thought process is we got to kill Bruce. Mm-hmm. And Sharee even admits that she has to talk Jerry into doing this, but it's going to be easy because she's got a game plan, just like you were talking about a second ago.
That's right. Yeah, because he's a mob boss. He's a mafia don. Mm-hmm. She can't just get away. She can't just get out. Mm-mm. You don't get out.
You don't get out.
No, you don't. And so
you're in for life. So you marry in, you're in for life.
That's it. She's like, he's going to have to go. I mean, how else am I going to get away?
There's only one way out.
That's right.
And that's through Heaven's Gate.
That's right. That's where you're going. So, I mean, she's like, I got to get out. That means that he has to go, because if he's still alive, he's going to come find me. He's going to have his boys jump in their jalopy and come find me.
Yep.
And so Jerry, unsurprisingly to him, but surprisingly to everyone else listening, he's like, you got it.
Yeah, because she starts telling him, like, hey, this is when the rape and the gang rapes, mm-hmm. and the beating and the bruising. And I don't know if I can't remember if I touched on this specifically in the last episode, but she goes as far as using makeup to put bruises on, right. to make it look like she has bruising on her stomach. And there's actually pictures of this.
Yeah.
They found the pictures of this that she sent to Jerry, where she has applied makeup to her abdomen.
Yeah.
And said, that she has been beaten up and Bruce and his cohorts are beating her up and raping her and doing all these things to her. And Jerry's like, man, this is terrible. We got us a bad situation. And she's like, Jerry, I was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what? She's like, remember that last time we met up? I was pregnant. I didn't want to tell you. I'm making some of this up right now. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't know how you'd react. But I was pregnant with twins.
Twins, that's it.
They were yours.
Mm-hmm.
And I've miscarried due to these beatings, these sexual assaults, these physical assaults. And she even goes as far as taking sonogram pictures from her previous pregnancies and sending them to him.
Goodness.
And so when I said in the last episode that Jerry said he didn't know those kids, but he loved them.
Right.
That he didn't get a chance to meet them. That
he bought in wholesale.
He was literally all in.
Yeah.
I do mention later on, I think he figures out kind of the ruse that's going on.
Right.
But in the beginning, he's thinking to himself that he lost 2 of his kids because this mob boss, this mob don or whatever, mafia don, had his killed his kids.
That's right. And that was the last straw.
Yeah. And she even goes as far as creating fake accounts to email Jerry as Bruce.
Right.
And be like, hey man, the jig's up. I know who you are. Sharee told me what's going on. You better stay away or I'm going to kill her and everybody she loves and I'm going to kill you and all this. And she's like, Jerry, what are we going to do about this?
And he's like,
boy, I happen to know a few things.
There's only one way to deal with somebody like that.
He's got to be killed.
He's got to be killed.
And we got to be the ones to do it. And she's like, wow, you would do that for me? And he's like, yeah, I'll do anything for you. I love you. We're going to be together, right? After this takes place, we're going to be together, right? And she's like, yeah, sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
she's
sure.
like, yeah, that's exactly what's going to happen. Once the way is cleared and Bruce is no longer a threat to you, me, or our future children, then we're going to be together.
We're going to be together. Jerry, we got to have some cool off time. Mm-hmm. Okay. You can't just move up here. Or I can't just move down. We got to play it safe. And he's probably thinking to himself, because he's a former police officer, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
And not only that, she also starts giving him information about like the shop and stuff, like the scrapyard. Locations,
schedules, addresses,
cameras,
you name it. She's giving it to him in very good detail.
Right.
And
she's just as on board as this plan as he is at this point.
Yeah. And she kind of brings him into this fold by manipulating him even further. But once she gets there, she even explains that as they're kind of getting close to when all of this is supposed to take place, Jerry's still saying, is there any other options that we have that we can kind of explore so that we don't have to do this? Mm-hmm. And she basically is telling him over and over, no.
Yeah.
No, it has to be done this way. And she even gets to the point where she's calling him and she's like, hey, you going to do it? You going to do it? He's like, man, I'm going to do it. She's like, when are we doing it? You going to do it? Let's do it. We're going to do it. He's like, I'll do it.
Yeah, because at this point, she's also knowing if Bruce gets ganked, she's going to inherit everything.
Yeah.
She's the
I don't know what the will looked like, but no. I can't imagine that she would get nothing.
Right.
And then all of her problems with her stealing money from Bruce and all of the other things, those just now magically go away.
That's right. And no one's ever going to know about them.
Yeah. So let's talk about Jerry's trip up to Michigan. Because one of the interesting things I found is that Jerry makes his way up to Michigan and back and is 100% undetected.
That's right.
He goes all the way up there and back, and no one ever even knew that he was there.
Is it a day trip?
That's one of the things I was thinking about. Would he be able to accomplish what he needed to accomplish and get from Odessa, Missouri, because that's where he was living at whenever he ended up killing himself. But spoiler alert, if you didn't listen to the first episode, you need to go back and listen to it because we give away some information in there. So whenever after the event takes place, he is in Odessa, Missouri. So let's just say He's in Odessa, Missouri, and he's heading up to Flint, Michigan. How long does it take him to get there?
Let's pull him up right now. It's 11 hours.
11 hours. So let's assume that it's a overnighter.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to have to stay at a cash motel on the outside of town and then drive back.
Mm-hmm.
So he drives up. He does what he's going to do. He drives back, stays in a motel, and he goes undetected. So let's kind of get into that part of it. Jerry is given all of this information from Sharee,
mm-hmm.
and she gives it to him, like you said, to a T. He knows where Bruce is going to be at. He's got directions to the place. He's got a layout of how the building is, where the entrances are, where the exits are. He knows everything before he goes up there. And I kind of feel like when Sharee gave him that information, that she was being coached in one way or another by him, because these are just questions that he's probably instinctually going to ask.
Absolutely. He's not a stranger to doing, a good recce, a good reconnaissance.
Yeah.
Writing warrants and things like that. You have to be very specific with things. So he's going to be like, well, what does it look like? What does, where's the entrance to the scrapyard? How many entrances are there? Where are the cameras? How many people should be working there? He's going to ask all these questions, because these are things you'd also need to know if you were going to write a warrant and do a raid on the place or go looking for somebody at that address. So he has all this. He probably shows up. He's in a vehicle that nobody's going to recognize. Now, again, we're just saying this is all in, speculation, but he shows up. He probably does a reconnaissance where he kind of eyeballs the joint. He's looking at traffic patterns. He's looking for how many people are there, if there's anybody but Bruce there.
Yep. He's going to have to wait for the time to go in there when he feels it's going to be that situation where he's sitting outside. You got to assume he's not just going to drive up to a place, walk in the door. He's going to make sure Bruce is by himself.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. He's probably sitting outside the business, maybe down the road. He's watching, and he waits for a time that he feels most comfortable that no one else is inside there or that no one else is on their way.
That's right.
And I truly believe that when, right before all of this took place, Sharee called him to make sure that he was in the office at his desk.
That's a really good point, because that would guarantee this being a success. Hey, where you at? Or if she called the office phone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
This is 1999, right?
Yeah. Yeah, 1999.
So, he probably had an office phone that he used primarily. Maybe she calls and she's like, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, great. Yeah, tuna fish sandwich for lunch. That's great. And then she hangs up the phone. She calls Jerry right back. Hey, he's in there. He's in his office.
No one's in there.
Yep.
Are you
He's
ready?
By himself.
Yeah.
Are you going to do it? Are you going to do it, Jerry? Jerry.
Jerry's like, I'll do it.
Jerry. Do it.
Do it.
So Jerry does. He hops out. He walks in there. He goes into the office to find Bruce sitting at his desk. And this is where he blasts him with a 20-gauge shotgun.
Yep.
So this is something that I try to imagine these scenarios like any true crime, nerd would. How exactly did it happen?
Yeah.
Did he walk in and address him? Was he heard walking up, or did he sneak up as best as he could? Did a turkey peek around the corner to make sure he was there? Turn the corner, blam.
Yeah,
and it gets him.
Because Sharee told him, if you go up on this side of the building, the door will be right here, and so he won't be able to see you walking up. So as soon as you open the door, that is going to probably be first contact.
Right.
And then you're right, but is it one of those things where he opened the door and he's like, you killed my kid, or something?
Yeah.
He yells, or did he just walk in, get straight to business?
Right. Did they interact at all? My mind wanders to that. Like, what happened? Did he walk up? Did he walk in and point the gun at him and hesitate for a moment?
Yeah.
Or did he turn the corner, turn and burn?
Yep.
He was like, there he is, turned in. Bruce looks up before he can even process anything. He's like, hey, there's a dude. That's a gun. Bam, I'm dead.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wonder, but we don't know. Because
don't.
Jerry ain't around to tell nobody that.
Jerry can't tell no tales.
Yeah, and from what I've read, there wasn't anything like that except in the stuff he left behind.
Yeah, and I wish that's where one of those things where with our backgrounds, I wish we could get our hands on information like that because we got to kind of do it off the cuff. But that's one of the things I think of. And so let's talk about the way in which Bruce was killed, because that goes back to Jerry's background.
That's right.
Jerry shoots Bruce in the neck and chest area
Mm-hmm.
with a shotgun. Mike and I were talking about it beforehand. We were thinking, okay, our minds go to, okay, well, what kind of rounds did he have in the shotgun? Did he have a bird shot?
Yeah.
Did he have a buckshot? Did he have a slug?
He had a slug. It's a 20 gauge.
How close was he?
Yeah. So it says blast.
Yeah.
And everything that you read, it says a blast from a 20 gauge shotgun. So I'm definitely thinking it's probably a dove load, a bird load.
Yeah.
That has like a decent spread on it.
But it'd have to be definitely close range.
Right. Yeah, you're going to have to be very close range. I'm saying, I don't know the dimensions of his office, but I'm saying he was probably within 15 feet.
Or closer. Walked up. Yeah, 15 feet being the maximum.
Right.
But probably closer. And then then Mike and I started talking about, well, if he had a slug in there, if he had some buckshot in there,
yeah.
I mean, you're going to deal significantly more damage.
Right.
But we don't have that information. But one thing I think we need to point out is that if he would have shot Bruce in the face,
mm-hmm.
it would have came off to me
more personal.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
So he didn't.
Yeah.
And maybe he was in the motion of doing that, and he has the gun pointed at Bruce's face, and he's like, oh, and he drops it down just a little bit, boom, pulls the trigger.
Or the opposite, or he was bringing it up to his face and squeeze a round off early, because when you're learning to acquire targets and shoot quickly, a lot of times you find yourself shooting high or low because of the way that you bring the gun up, and where you perceive the barrel to be when you squeeze that trigger is not necessarily where it is.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really leaning into how exactly that happened, but what happens is he gets him. Yeah. And what's really unique about this situation is that Jerry knows that a smoothbore shotgun of any size, provided that he took the shell with him after he spent it, or it was a breakaway and he never discharged the shell after firing the shot, there is no way to track that round.
Yep.
There's absolutely no, you cannot find the shotgun that fired it.
Yeah. And and that's what Mike and I were talking about. We know that he knows that. He didn't bring a shotgun by accident.
That's right.
He brought a shotgun on purpose because he knew that there was no way that they were going to be able to trace that gun or that murder back to him using a firearm.
Yeah.
Because of the shotgun.
Also, Flint, Michigan, daytime in a scrapyard. Hearing a boom is not going to arouse any suspicion.
Nope.
Yes.
There's going to be a lot of noise happening.
I know a lot of people out there that are going to be like, it's a gunshot. I know a gunshot when I hear one. You know what? You're right, but you'd be surprised in the middle of the day, traffic, scrapyard, work going on. You hear a boom, the first thing you might not think of it being a gunshot at first.
Yeah.
You might be like, bam. You're like, somebody over there dropped an engine block, dropped a bumper, knocked over an axle.
Something. Yeah.
Dropped a tailgate. You don't know.
And if the majority of the people out there think they would be able to distinguish between a gunshot and not, I would say if you've ever been in law enforcement, you worked on the 4th of July, I would disagree.
I absolutely disagree. But I mean, there's people out there that do that. They're like, not only did I hear what I am 100% sure was a gunshot, sir, it was a 9mm Luger. Yeah. Because my uncle owned one.
I remember hearing that he used to shoot that thing all the time when I was a kid, and I never mistake that sound.
It's crazy.
You're like, what? It's the 4th of July.
And that sounds like it sounds like we're just crack-a-lacking, but people say that all the time. It's always a common handgun cartridge, and they always know that they wouldn't mistake that sound for anything. But guess what it was? It was a kid hitting a trash can with an aluminum bat down the block. Yeah.
Or I'm serious. If you ever working the 4th of July was absolutely terrible because of all the calls you would have to go on, either fireworks calls or potentially what sounded like gunshots.
Yep.
We're like, but it wasn't gunshots. We all know it's not gunshots.
Sir, that was a 45 ACP. I know that because my grandpappy came back from Vietnam and he had one.
Yeah, he had one. I still got it in this house right now.
That's right. I can go fire it right now. It sounds just like this.
Yeah, you want to hear? You want to hear? Because I'll fire this thing off right now.
Sir, no house pops.
Yeah, no, you cannot do a house pop. But yeah, so going back to that situation, Jerry knows what kind of gun to bring, and then to kind of sell this thing a little further, Sharee lets him know that he usually has $2,000 cash in his shirt pocket, and to go ahead and steal his wallet as well.
That's right.
And so as this whole scenario is kind of getting set up from when Jerry leaves and then Bruce's body is discovered by his brother, which is horrible.
Yeah, that is horrible.
You know, and the thing is that Sharee set that up too.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
She called Bruce's brother and said, I haven't heard from Bruce. He's at the scrapyard. Will you go check on him? Knowing good and well that he's in that office, dead.
Is this same day?
Same day.
So this is right after Jerry confirms that it happens? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then when Jerry kills Bruce, he bails.
Right.
And then Sharee starts calling the office and she's like, can't get a hold of Bruce. This is really weird. And that's one of the things in the beginning, like in the part 1, where I started out with that because I didn't want to immediately go into, because a lot of people that listen to true crime and podcasts and stuff like that, it's like, so she gets a call from them and they're like, she killed him.
Yep.
I'm like, hold on. She
murdered him.
Yeah, she killed him. I'm like, let me get in the story a little bit more, please. And they're like, it was her, right? She's the one that killed him. I'm like, please let me talk.
I have a whole podcast. Please wait.
I have this whole thing planned out. Please wait. So that's the reason why I set it up like that, is that Sharee starts trying to get a hold of him. She can't get a hold of him, so she calls Bruce's brother, and she's like, hey, Bruce isn't answering the phone. He didn't come home for dinner. And he's like, all right, well, I'll run out there and check on him, see if everything's okay. He opens up the door. Bruce is dead.
Ugh.
So she sets that up. Now, Bruce's brother has to live with that for the rest of his life.
That's dark.
Yeah, I mean, that's that.
Soulless.
If you kind of jump into the mind of Sharee at this time, she's literally not thinking about anybody but herself.
She is without any other thought closing loops.
Yes.
She's like,
to protect herself.
Jerry calls, it's done. She's like, Roger that, the eagle has flown the nest.
Yeah.
She hangs up. She's like, I have to wait an appropriate amount of time.
Yeah.
Dinner to elapse.
Maybe I need to go get on the internet and chat with some of my guy friends.
Yeah, just hanging at the house, LOL. You know?
Not committing murder or anything.
Yeah.
They're like, solid alibi.
Yeah, I am at my house, inside my computer room, because that was probably a thing in 1999.
Oh, yeah. You gotta have that computer room.
Yeah, I'm definitely home. I have not gone anywhere in X number of hours. I've been at my dwelling the entire time.
Phone call.
Alibi.
She's setting this thing up rock solid.
Right. She waits for that, a time to elapse, and she's like, I'm going to call his brother and be like, I haven't heard from Bruce. Bruce's brother shows up, finds him dead, and that's where she's like, it's done. Jerry just hoofs it back to...
Blew into town, committed murder, blew out of town. No one even knew he was there.
Right.
And then they're like, Sharee, Bruce is dead. And she's like, oh no, how unfortunate.
Oh God, woe is me. Why?
Yep.
And then some time starts to go by, and...
Not much,
but this case ain't getting solved.
No, and that's one of the things that I was talking to Mike about before this, is that I would actually like to know, because one of the police officers that was investigating his murder talked about how the condition of the shop was, and that they figured they would have found more evidence in there, so they found that to be a little suspicious. And so my thought was, suspicious on the front end or suspicious after you figured out who it was?
So let's talk about what these police officers are finding when they get there. We don't know the specifics because we're not privy to information, but they show up, they see the owner of the scrapyard dead with a shotgun blast. They don't know what it is. They'll find that out later, but he looks like his pockets have been gone through. He dead.
Yeah, it looks like a robbery.
Right. It looks like it looks like a robbery. It looks like a guy hard on his luck showed up, blam, took the dude for what he was worth, headed out.
Yeah, if you did business with Bruce and you ever saw him make you change, you would know that money's in his shirt pocket. So that literally opened up the possibilities to anyone who's ever done business with him, period.
Not to mention, they identified the weapon that shot him. A breakaway or any type of 20-gauge shotgun is a very easily acquirable firearm in anywhere in America.
Yeah.
It's very common. The ammunition is not expensive. Well, it probably wasn't in 1999.
Yeah, it is. Everything is now.
It was super common. It's easy to hide. It's something that anybody could get their hands on, even like a low life that would kill a guy that runs a scrapyard for his pocket money.
Yeah, and shotgun, like Mike said, shotguns being very common weapons. Where I grew up at, I did not know anybody that did not possess one.
That's right.
Everybody had a shotgun.
That's right.
Not everybody I knew had a pistol or had or an AR or whatever, but everybody I knew that lived out in the country, especially because where I lived at, we had a lot of bird hunting. Mm-hmm. Not a lot, but was there. Varmints, birds, all of these different things. Everybody had a shotgun.
That's right.
And so
everybody's truck beds were littered with red and yellow shells.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be very difficult to nail down who this was exactly. And then they go in there and they're like, man, this place is pretty dirty. Mm-hmm. We should be able to find fingerprints. We should be able to find this or that. But then that's what I want. That's why I want to know, was that statement before or after? Because if you looked at it from one perspective, and this is the way I was kind of looking at it, if you walked in there and you said, okay, if this was somebody that knew Bruce and they knew that he had $2,000 in his pocket, what are the chances he probably has some more cash in his wallet? It was a quick hit. They came in, they shot Bruce, they took his cash, they grabbed his wallet, they ran out. Yep. This is broad daylight.
Yeah.
And so when I'm thinking about they found it suspicious that there wasn't more evidence there, I would say, well, how come? I mean, you would think, okay, like you said earlier, did they rummage around the place? Well, they obviously didn't.
Right.
Would somebody in that situation do that?
They were just there for the pocket money. And let's go as far to say these are Flint, Michigan, it's probably not the roughest town, but it probably ain't real smooth.
Yeah.
It's probably a little rough. So these detectives show up, they look into it, and they're like, they walk in, he takes the last drag of his cigarette, he flips it out the door, and he goes, it's a robbery. Yeah. And they're like, their minds are already made up. There's no other reason to think anything.
They're like, good call, LT. That's what I was thinking as well. Yeah. They're like, all right, work it, boys. I'm out of here.
Back on patrol, Johnson. Yeah. I'm solving crimes here. Yeah. And why would they look into it anymore? That's exactly what it looks like. And the lack of evidence, or the lack of this, like the scene being messed up, the lack of any other evidence being found at the scene, to them, that's because they weren't there for anything else. You could easily write that off as this is what happens here. This is how robberies work. It's not like Bruce was going to give up that money for nothing. So they were like, hey, give me the money. And he was like, I didn't give you my pocket money. Blam, now you are.
Yeah.
And then the dude just ran out. And let me tell you guys, security cameras, yes, the scrapyard had them. But it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody that even a dumb criminal can get around a stationary security camera.
Yes. Happens a lot.
Yeah, especially if it's a place that you might go. How else would you know that Bruce had the pocket monies? Mm-hmm. You go there and you're like, oh, he's got a camera over here. Even if it's not working, I know how to get around it because it doesn't turn. We're not looking like a wide angle, like pigeon eyeball camera. This is probably just a straight, clunky, dust and cobweb covered camera that's been up there for X number of years. Easy enough to get around.
Yep.
So these detectives, they're like, this is open and shut robbery. Boom, done.
Yeah, we're out of here. And you brought up an interesting point whenever we were talking about this before the show started, is that you thought that the time that Jerry walked in the door to the time that Bruce was shot had to have been pretty quick based on the fact that he did not have any sort of defensive wounds, or it did not appear that
he put his hand.
They did not talk about him having any damage to his hands, like as he would be putting his hands up to.
Yeah, he sees a guy walk in, points a gun at him. Jerry hesitates. Bruce puts his hands up and he's like, whoa, man, what the heck? He doesn't, there is nothing like that. For all intents and purposes, it looks like somebody walked in, blam, shot him around the chest. He fell out of his chair.
Before he had a chance to react, he was already shot. He was in the processes of dying.
Yeah.
And one of the other things that I was going to bring up is maybe we're not exactly giving the police officers enough credit here, because from the time that Bruce is murdered to the time that Jerry commits suicide is only about 3 months, and around 3 months and some change. Mm-hmm. But still, if you watch shows like The First 48, okay, your chances of solving that crime,
they go down drastically
after the first 48 hours. And I know that because that's a real TV show.
And it's a good one, too. Yeah. You learn a lot. I'm sure everybody listening is like, I know all about 48 hours. Why don't you pipe down, Mike?
Yeah, not Eddie Murphy 48 hours. The First 48.
You talking about Eddie Murphy and Nick Nolte's?
Yeah, man, that was a great movie, too. I love that movie.
What about the next 48 hours?
I'm okay with it still. That was still actually not one of those ones where I'm like...
They really kickstarted the buddy cop genre, didn't it?
Yeah. And then don't even get me talking about Point Break.
Don't even.
My Johnny Utahs and my Patrick Swayzes. Please don't. I can't go there right now.
Golden, don't do it.
I can't go there right now. And by the way, the remake of it, trash. They should have just called it something else. Why couldn't they have just called it something else? It would have been a great movie if you would not have been thinking about Point Break in your head with Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze.
Well, sadly, the rights for that movie were up for sale. Somebody bought it and was like, cash grab, let's hit it.
Let's do it. So anyways, all right, going back. And now I forgot what I was talking about.
We were talking about how in the time since the murder to Jerry committing suicide is only like 3 months.
It's only like 3 months, but from what I can tell, there was not a whole lot of ground being made on who killed Bruce.
Right.
They had no idea what happened. And they're probably not even thinking to themselves at this time, we should go in and write a warrant for Sharee's computer. This is a new thing. All of this kind of stuff that's going on is a new thing. They've never had. This is probably one of the scenarios that got people in law enforcement thinking we should go in and get an electronic warrant and take all of their things inside the house. This is probably that first step into there. And that's why you don't have them kind of milling around at Sharee's house and she's playing the victim. I'm sure she played it very well based on her survival tactics and the way that she was like, oh man, I don't know what happened to Bruce. He didn't come home from from work and he never misses dinner.
Right.
And so I was scared. And they're like, ma'am, we understand. Your husband was involved in a robbery gone wrong.
Gone wrong. There it is.
And he is deceased.
Yeah.
And she's like, no. Did he have any more money on him in there? Is there anything? Because you got to understand, I have to go buy groceries.
Yeah.
Like Thursdays are my grocery days. And he was supposed to give me money when he got home from work. And they're like, hang on. She's like, how much money you guys got on? You guys got your wallets on you? And they're like, yeah. And she's like, give me a couple $100, please. And like, okay.
They're like, weird. I just want to do this.
Yeah. Strangely, I just want to give you all the money in my wallet. And she's like, yeah, that's it.
Perfect. Anyway, you can help yourselves out.
But bye now.
Yeah, there's the door.
Yeah. And so so I don't see any area where they were kind of making ground, putting together Sharee in this deal because, like I said, Jerry came into town and he was out of town and they had no clue who this man was.
Right, yeah.
They had no way to tie this together.
Absolute lack of leads.
Yep.
It literally just looks like a robbery. But 3 months later, Jerry can't live with this anymore because of what he's done. But what really kickstarts that is in the weeks following, Bruce's...
Literal weeks.
Within 2 weeks, he hits up old Sharee and he's like, hey, girl.
I did a lot of things for you. It's time. Daddy's coming home to roost. Yeah.
And she's like, I'm sorry, what?
He's like, Daddy's coming home.
Mm-hmm.
I committed murder for you.
She's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
She's like, Jerry, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. And she's in the background. He's like, who's on the phone? And she's like, hang on, Daryl.
Yeah.
And he's like, who's Daryl?
She's like, yeah.
He made up. But she's like, who's Daryl? He's like, that's my new man.
Mm-hmm.
And he's living with me. And Jerry just...
absolute tailspin after that.
He loses it.
He puts together very quickly that Sharee is not interested in being with him. And the gravity of what he has done to try to secure his future with Sharee is a farce. It's not going to happen. He has committed murder going against everything he stood for at a time in his life when he was a police officer and a detective. And he's done. Yeah.
Because, like you said, within 2 weeks, she's already dating another guy. She has not pumped the brakes on her nightlife since the murder of Bruce. People are seeing her around town. And I know people are probably talking and saying like, dude, I bet she had something to do with it. But you can never put those pieces together because she was smart. She had a guy who lived in Missouri kill her husband in Michigan.
That's right.
That was the smart part about it. And then a month after the murder of Bruce, she already has a new guy living with her. Now, I know I made up the scenario with Daryl there. That was not real. But the fact that she had someone that moved into her house within a month, that was real.
That's real, yeah.
And then as we go from the point of the murder to a month later, 4 weeks, she has been slowly, week by week, cutting him off more and more and more in the times that they talk. And I bet in the first couple of days after Bruce is murdered,
things were normal.
They were probably just chatting. They're talking back and forth. He's like, "Oh, I can't believe I did that." And she's like, "I can't believe you did that for me. I love you so much.
Yep.
We're going to be so happy together." And he's like, "I know." And then a couple days later, he's like, "Hey, I've been trying to call you and you haven't been answering the phone." She's like, "Jerry, I'm busy.
It turned into...
I'm planning a funeral over here."
Yeah. That you caused.
Yeah.
It turned into missed phone calls. It turned into her IMs being set to away or busy. And that's when Jerry's like,
oh, wait.
Holy
What's going on
smokes.
here?
And he starts to realize,
I've been had.
Yeah. And he starts kind of, in his last weeks of his life, he starts kind of investigating this with the skills that he already possesses.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's able to figure out when she's like, "Look, Jerry, I appreciate everything you did for me. Also, you can't talk about because you're the one that did it." So her secret is safe with him, so she thinks.
Right.
Because he's the one that committed the murder.
He's the murderer.
She can be the widow that got her husband was murdered. It's a tragedy. She can spin that all over town. Whenever it comes down to it, she's probably thinking it's her word against his, but he's not going to out himself because if he does, he's going to prison.
That's right.
And so she tells him, like, basically, she's like, "Hey, we're done.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you did all this stuff for me. Maybe I'm not going to acknowledge it, but we appreciate it. We appreciate your business, your service, and you can go now."
Yeah, peace out.
And he doesn't do well with that. And just like you said, he already possesses the skills to start piecing this thing apart. And then he probably starts looking at the pictures, and he probably starts looking at things. He's like, "Oh, crap.
Yep.
Man, I got duped.
I just got tooled right into this."
And that makes him feel even worse because then he realizes that he in his mind, I'm sure he was thinking that Bruce was not an innocent man, that Bruce was a terrible human being that did terrible things to people, and that this world would be a better off place without Bruce in it. And then when he realizes he got duped, he's like, "I killed an innocent man that was probably good to her and did not deserve this," and he has to live with that. And we also have to remember that he's got a very fragile emotional state.
He does.
And the substance abuse that he's involved in do not help him.
No. And so after he sets aside and kind of gets his affairs in order, to a certain extent, including the briefcase.
Yeah.
That contains the evidence trail that is found later. He pens a couple letters.
Yeah, 3 of them, I believe. He did a good job as far as getting all the evidence gathered.
Yeah.
That they would need.
Right. And then he sits down in his recliner.
I mean, he's still a scumbag.
Sure.
Because he killed... Man, I know. He is a scumbag because he killed an innocent man. He did commit murder. I can somewhat, without people yelling at me, please, don't at me. I can somewhat understand why he did what he did, thinking what he thought.
Of course, yeah. He was being manipulated just terribly.
Yeah, but he did a very good job of getting the evidence together before he parted ways with this life. And one of the things that Sharee was talking about in that interview was that he had been calling her after she had been telling him like to kind of buzz off, but they were still, what she said is they would still chat from time to time. And that he told her that he was in a pinch. He had some bad checks that he had written and that he needed some money. So she said that she snail mailed him $3,500 cash to his house while all this was taking place.
Yeah.
And he was telling her that he couldn't take it anymore. He couldn't live with himself. He killed a man. He doesn't have her. He's going to kill himself. Sharee says that she called his ex-wife and was like, "Hey, Jerry's saying that he's going to kill himself." And his ex-wife was like, "Yeah, he says that all the time, but he's actually not going to do it."
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Terrible.
That was one of the things I was like, "Oh, man."
Yeah.
There's some red flags here, people. We might want to investigate that.
Red flags all around in this sode.
Yeah, for sure. Good job putting that in there.
Yeah, man.
Got this everywhere in this sode. And she calls Jerry's ex-wife again, and she's like, hey, I cannot get a hold of him because she knows I sent him $3,500. Did he get the money or not?
Mm-hmm.
I can't get a hold of him. He said he was going to kill himself. So finally, several days later, they decide to go check on old Jerry, and he's in his easy chair with a Bible in his lap and a bullet through his head.
Yep. He went ahead and pieced on out.
Yep. He could not take the weight of the situation anymore. I can understand that. I can understand he was probably in a place where he felt horrible and he killed himself.
Golly, just to be duped to that level of an act of violence, to find out it was all a charade from Sharee.
It was all a charade.
Charade.
It was all a charade from Sharee.
It was.
Golly.
And it's not till a few days later after they find his body that they find the briefcase, where he's basically lined out all the evidence that they will need to take this entire incident right back to the source.
Can you imagine his family being in his house or apartment or whatever it was, going through his personal effects, and they're like, "Oh, his briefcase. Why is there a note taped to it? That's weird. Oh, it's probably so. Let's see. Oh my gosh!
Imagine, the confusion, the surprise. Like, I'm talking like getting an adrenaline dump from reading a letter.
Yeah, because he said in his letter that he wrote to his parents or his mother that he outlined in that letter to his mother that he had been manipulated by Sharee and that he killed a man because of her. Right. Thinking that it was because of one reason when it was all actually a lie, and that's why he did it. He couldn't live with himself.
Terrible.
Yeah, terrible.
Just so dark. And then the police there in Missouri get with the police in Flint, Michigan.
They're like, we got us a murder on our hands,
They're
boys.
like, hey, man, you know a guy named Bruce Miller got ganked for some pocket money? And they're like, yeah.
It's a robbery gone bad.
It's just a robbery gone bad, classic. And they're like, actually,
they're like, yeah, this former cop down here where we live at, he drove up there and killed him. They're like, yeah, what?
Yeah, I'm sure they were like, say that again? Yeah. It is that thing where you grab the phone and you tuck it deeper into your shoulder.
Yeah, you got to really get that. You got to get it in there and feel it.
Yeah, and he's like, no, he lined out the whole thing.
What proof do you have, sir?
Exactly.
And like, I got a briefcase full of crap that says that he killed her, and it was his wife that put him up to it. Yeah. They're like, that's what we were thinking this whole time.
I knew that scene was too clean.
Yeah, exactly. That scene, I was just commenting the other day, that scene looked awfully clean. It kind of reminded me of a situation where a man that knew what he was doing was present. Yep. They're like, yeah, sure. So, how do you want us to send you this evidence or what? Yeah. And he's like,
we'll drive it up there if you want. If you don't sound like you need it, but I think you do.
I'm kind of thinking about this robbery, and they're like, sir,
come on back.
This is not a robbery. And he's like, okay, yeah, send me the evidence.
Yeah, send me the evidence.
I keep going back. And when I come back, I'm going to lock you up in the Federal Reserve. Where he's like, he's not putting that together.
He still doesn't understand.
Yeah, he still doesn't understand. That was an Other Guys reference. If you've never seen that movie, one of the best movies ever.
It is a quality comedy buddy cop movie. And watch the unrated one. It's even better.
It is so funny.
It's one of those films where it's
got so many one-liners.
It does. I'm sure that was their point. And some slow-mo action scenes. It's the cartels. Where are you getting that from?
Where are you getting that information? He's like, exactly. And they're selling drugs. He's like, where'd you get that information from the video that you just watched? And that's what I was kind of trying to tie that back to. And then I realized I'm having a conversation with Mike, and he will get the reference, but I'm also recording this to people that may, so I had to put in the other guy reference where it's like, he's talking to a detective that's just like, he's like, hey buddy, I don't think you're getting what I'm saying here. And he's like, we're just gonna send you this evidence. Yeah. And Sharee ends up getting, and that's the thing. We all know that Sharee gets arrested. She's put in jail. We got all that information. She gets out, she goes back in. But one of the interesting things I thought about and that I wanted to talk about is now, present day. When Sharee was out on the move, when she was out doing her thing, when she was released from jail, she was still claiming that she was innocent. She ended up having to go back to prison, but now, present day, right? She takes full responsibility for the murder. She admits that she set it up. She admits that she manipulated Jerry. She admits all of this. And she also understands that she has to pay for that crime.
That's right.
She's got to pay for her consequences.
I gotta pay for my consequences.
Go back and listen to the last step to Little Dick. That episode we had about him. That was a good one. I liked that one. But yeah, she's got to pay for that, and she knows that she has to pay for it, and she's not even asking anybody to help her in an effort to get her out of jail. She understands that she has to stay. I don't really know. You know, it's one of those situations where if you get double crossed by someone, I have a hard time trying to figure out if she's being genuine or not. I want to believe what she's saying right now, that she's taking responsibility for all this. But in the back of my mind, I always think there's some sort of ulterior motive.
When it comes to somebody like Sharee?
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think, didn't she write a letter to a judge about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Several people.
Like a 4-page letter. And she was like, yeah, this is actually all me. Or maybe she just came to terms with it because time heals all wounds, Crowley.
That's what they say.
And she made peace with the fact that she's a dirtbag.
She had an innocent man murdered.
For basically nothing.
Yeah, and that was one of the things I wanted to bring up here at the end, was that now we know, you know, when I ended the last podcast, I was like, but why, you know, she says that she didn't want people to find out who she was. And in that interview, she says, you know, I was a whore. I was a terrible person. These are her words. That's why I used them earlier. I was all of these different things.
Yeah.
And, you know, I realized that I was that, and I needed to get that off my chest and let everybody know. I don't know. I still have a hard time trying to figure out like where that.
Or maybe that was the end of the lies, and she just bought into it and knows she's going to be in a little 10x10 cell for the rest of her life, and she's made peace with that. It's 3 hots and a cot.
Yeah, buddy.
and an hour a wreck.
Yeah. Maybe 3 times a week. She could be in Gen Pop. I don't know. She could be in general population. And I don't know. I felt like in this one, going back to that, is that when I left off that last episode, I was kind of asking why. And in this episode, we have a little more information, but it still seems a little silly to me.
Sure.
A lot of S's in there.
Yeah.
Still seems a little strange to me that she had her husband killed for that.
Right.
Like, you couldn't just move on? You had to have some guy murdered? I don't know.
You did have practice with moving on. Figured that'd be something you could do, but maybe she got in too deep. You know, it's like they say, when you start with a little lie, and the next time you have to get a bigger lie, and a bigger lie, and a bigger lie, and you also have to keep track of all your little lies.
Yep.
And it just spirals out of control to the point where you're willing to have somebody killed to protect this lie image that you've created around you.
Yeah, and she might have been caught up in some of the excitement from it as well.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely all that there, but, I mean, we could talk about that for another 20 minutes, but I think that would bore you. So, do you have anything else you'd like to add to this sode?
No.
Yeah,
no. I think this is a good sode. I think we really covered it and had a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
There was some pretty good lines going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're going to leave it there for this episode. Make sure and tune in next week. We're going to have another episode for you as we do. So everybody take care. Thanks for tuning in and listening. We will talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. Our numbers are going up, our downloads are going up, and we have you guys to thank for that. If you're looking for us on any of the social media platforms, you can find us on Facebook. If you need to search for us, we're at facebook.com/podcasttmp. If you're looking for us on Instagram, we are at The Murder Project. And if you're looking for us over on Twitter, we are at The Murder Pod. Also, don't forget, go over to Wisdom, check that out. It's a new app. It's going to be awesome. Talk to us directly. It's going to be really cool. Let us know your feedback. We would appreciate it. And also, don't forget, go on to any platform that you're listening on. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcast, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review and hit that 5 stars, baby.
Hit the 5 stars. Slam them.
Slam them. We got a few more recently. We appreciate that. If you have the Apple app or an iPhone, please go over and do that. That helps us out so much. Also, if you have a longer form question or comment and you'd like to shoot us an email, we do have an email address. That is contact@themurderproject.com. And as always, Mike or myself will get back to you. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and listening to this episode of The Murder Project. We look forward to speaking to you very soon. But before we go, please remember,
head up, eyes up,
and stay alive.